Brian Bahe.
Hey, what's up? I'm Indigenous, and thank you. When people find that out about me, they're like, "Do you have a traditional Indigenous name like Crazy Horse or Sitting Bull or something like that?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. But if I did have one, it would be Chipotle Bathroom Code." That is very much my vibe, which is cool. I'm Asian passing though, which means that like everybody assumes that I'm Asian, you know, like my family included. It's great, I love it. One time I was at IHOP just like eating pancakes by myself, as you do like when you go to IHOP. And the waitress taps me on the shoulder and she's like, "Hey, this guy over here paid for your meal." And I looked over to see who it was, and it was just like an older white man who was wearing a hat that said Vietnam War on it. Like he clearly just thought I was Vietnamese, you know, and I will be Vietnamese any day of the week for a short stack. Another time I was in a deli just like waiting for a sandwich to get made, and like I was just standing there, an Asian woman like walks in. As soon as she sees me, she like stops in her tracks, like locks eyes with me, and then immediately like starts like crying. And I'm just like, okay, I don't say anything. And then after like 2 minutes, she comes up to me and she's like, "I haven't seen you in 3 years." And I just like looked at her and I was like, "Yeah, work has been crazy." Like, I don't know if you remember this, but you do owe me $20. I'm gay too, so I'm on Grindr, and Grindr is interesting for sure. When you're on Grindr, you get to like select your like subgenre of gays that you feel like you identify as. You know, it's like, are you a twink? Are you a bear? I selected that I was a daddy and only a daddy, and nobody on Grindr liked that. I got a lot of messages that were like, "What makes you think you're a daddy?" And I would just respond and be like, "My two beautiful children." Samantha and Charles. I think it's funny when people criticize how unrealistic porn is, you know? I think it's funny when like somebody watches porn and they're just like, "She could never afford that home on a substitute teacher's salary." It's like, that's not the point, you know? I did, however, come across the most realistic porn I've ever seen. It was a stepdaddy, stepson scene, which is not my preferred scenario, but it was full length and free, so I was like, yeah, beggars can't be choosers. So the scene, it starts out, the stepdad and stepson are like in their living room. The stepson is like, "I'm so bored." And then the stepdad is like, "Well, you can't go outside because of the pandemic." And I'm like, oh, this is a period piece. Like the stakes in a stepdaddy stepson scene have never been higher. So then the stepdad is like, "Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to play like poker or something?" And then the stepson is like, "I hate poker." And then the stepdad is like, "Well, we can make it interesting. We can play strip poker." So then they proceed to play poker for 20 minutes straight. Just like 20 unedited minutes of them shuffling the cards, like dealing the cards to each other, looking at it and being like, "Yeah, I have nothing." And then there was a moment when the stepson is like, "What if mom comes home?" And then the stepdad is like, "She won't be home for a while, she's at work." And I'm like, wait, the mom is an essential worker? You know, I take out my pots and pans and start like banging them in solidarity. I do think the only thing that would have made that more realistic is if they brought up the protests that were happening across the country. You know, like the stepson is like, "I'm gonna go downtown to this protest, it's really important to me that I do it." And then the stepdad is like, "You can't go, you know I have a pre-existing condition." And then the stepson is like, I knew you would say that. I saw you posted a black square. You think that does anything? And then the stepdad is like, well, I also donated. And then the stepson is like, really, a one-time payment or recurring? And the stepdad is like, one time. The stepson is like, I knew it. I'm not even horny anymore. The stepdad is like, I'm not even horny anymore. And I'm watching it like, yeah, neither am I. I'm actually gonna go volunteer. I think it's great that land acknowledgements are becoming more commonplace, you know? However, I do think there is a time and place for land acknowledgements, and one of those times and places is not on Zoom. I was working for a company for like most of the lockdown, and the head of HR, who's very much not indigenous, started doing land acknowledgements during our weekly Zoom check-in meetings. And there was one meeting where he was like zooming in from his 5-bedroom home in upstate New York, and he's shouting into his camera, sorry if it's difficult to hear me, I can't figure out how to turn off my indoor waterfall. We are on Lenape land. I feel like land acknowledgements are gonna get co-opted by corporations very much like gay pride. I'm dreading the day that I walk into like a Warby Parker and there's like a huge banner and it's just like, we're on stolen land. And then right below that it's like, you know what else is a steal? 2 frames for $49. Because I will fully walk out of there with 4 frames. That's my time, everybody. Thank you.